again, and welcome to the Friday stream. I'm a little bit late today. It's 3:11 instead of right on 3, so hopefully if you were waiting for me or looking for the stream, you didn't tune off yet, or you're still kind of nearby, and you'll be notified that it's starting. Some people have asked me recently how to make sure that they don't miss these streams, which is very kind of you. And well, I've just done it, haven't I? Anyway, welcome to the stream. Some people recently have asked me how they can... My Google has decided to suddenly activate in the other room for no reason, so that's very scary. Some of you have asked me if how to make sure you don't miss these streams, and I'm not a professional YouTuber, but I believe that there is a bell in the notifications of my channel where you're subscribed, and you subscribe, but then you also hit the bell, and that turns on notifications, and it will whatever kind of notifications you have set up. So if you're on your phone right now, for instance, and you have your notifications from YouTube or Twitch set up to notify you when one of your subscribed channels starts streaming, then it would pop up, or however you have notifications set up. So that's a good way to do it. I do really try hard to start at 3 o'clock or a little earlier, so that people who are expecting it can show up on time. And usually that's some of my family members and a couple of my students. And a couple of you watch these after the fact because you can't be here at 3 or 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon on a Friday, which I totally get. And that's kind of why I chose this time, actually, because for those who can make it, it's a nice time to be able to interact at the end of the day. But if you don't get off work until 5 or something, then this will just be there for you. If you really want to interact, though, I can change the time. Just send me an email, and do that through my school email or my personal email, all of which are really easy to find. Okay, so what are we going to do today? Well, I wanted to do a different kind of warm-up. I haven't played any notes really today. I did a little sound check earlier, that's all. And we're going to do a little jazz later on, and I'll introduce you to sort of the system that I use for improvisation on a given tune. I don't know what tune we'll do, but maybe some people will be on by then, and you can tell me what tune you want me to do. But we're going to play some trumpet first, and I wanted this to be a simpler warm-up than normal, and a little simpler in terms of an analytical mind, right? So a lot of times I'm saying, okay, well, first we're going to start with breathing, and then we're going to do buzzing, and this is why we're doing buzzing, and this is what your embouchure should feel like, and okay, now we're going to do lead pipe buzzing. We're still going to do those things, but we're going to sort of make this a little more simplistic in our minds. So because we always are talking about the spectrum of different things that all are working together, right? So let's make it simple, and let's make it sort of bifurcated, okay? 2 parts, right? There's the qualitative result that you're looking for. In other words, does it sound good? And there's the also qualitative result of what it feels like. Does it feel good to produce, right? In other words, can I do this all day? Is it easy? There are a lot of ways to talk about that, and a lot of people say, well, easy is like sedentary, right? Like if I don't move, that's easy. Okay, sure, but in this case, we're talking about, does it work well, right? When I try to do it, do I get the result quickly that I want without an overabundance of effort, right? So we're looking for minimum effort, but we're not looking for less than that. So you can say all day, yeah, well, it's easier for me to do this other thing. Okay, but we need to satisfy both criteria. Does it sound good and does it feel good? And that's all we're going to think about, right? So in that spirit, we can do breathing if we think that will help us up front, right? So let's do that a little bit while I set up to not have notifications. I did it on the phone, but not the computer. All right, so we're just going to breathe a little bit. We can use a metronome like we did last warm-up, but I'm just looking for, does it feel good? Does it sound good? So what are our criteria for breathing? Well, we want it to be instantaneous, and I want the air to feel powerful, right? I don't want it to just be, right? That's not powerful. I'm not directing that in any way. The feel-good part of it is it easy? If I feel tight in any way, or if I feel like I'm really pushing the air out, that might not be a good feeling, but I might like the power that air is, and so that would be, does it sound good in this case, right? So let's try to get a really good, powerful airflow, and then let's see if we can make it in an easier, more relaxed way, right? So here we go. We're just going to go. Right, that's powerful air, a lot of air. And this addresses a different thing that we don't normally talk about, which is, why does more air work for a lot of people? Well, it works because a lot of times, up until a certain point, if you don't have enough air, then you have to do a lot more work to get anything to happen. So adding air to the equation gives you a lot of power and takes away responsibility from all the muscle groups and other things, tightness and pressure that you might have otherwise been using. So more air works up until it starts making you do more work, right? So it's not a panacea, but it is a good idea to kind of make sure that amount is enough, right? And you might guess what is enough, but add a little more until you're like, no, that's not helpful anymore, right? Just keep adding air until it's enough air, and right up to that maximum point, right? Okay, so here we go again. Now that first one was a little bit, I felt it down here a little bit too tight. So I'm going to breathe against support this time. I'm going to start my support a little earlier in the inhale so that I feel relaxed on the way out. And if you don't know what that means, don't worry about it. Now this time I'm going to try to keep my air fast and solid all the way through my breath, even if that means I run out faster. That's exponential support as I run out of air in my lungs, right? So here we go. So actually I lasted a little bit longer, but I narrowed, I just naturally said, like, well, I know I'm going to have to keep this even all the way through, and something changed in my mouth. I'm not even exactly sure what. And that's kind of what we're after here, is that was qualitatively better, and actually it was still just about the same amount of physical difficulty. So I'm going to do it again, and I'm going to see if I can make it just as even, but a little easier, and not any slower, right? I don't want to back off the air or push the air harder. I'm just going to see if I can find a better way to do it without, I don't know anything, right? This is exploratory. So here we go. That felt a little easier too, and maybe I'm just getting used to it. So I could do this for a while and just get used to breathing, right? I also don't need these on right now. I'll need them later, but okay, so now I need to make that happen in the mouthpiece. And why the mouthpiece? Well, it doesn't really matter. I could do the whole trumpet if I felt like that was better next, or I could do a cutout if I had a cutout, or I could work with the window for a little bit, or Tom Hooton's new device. There's a lot of options in between, right? But for today, again, we're keeping it simple. This is equipment everyone must have, right? You have a mouthpiece, you have a trumpet. So, and we're just going to work with B-flat trumpet today. So here we go. I'm just going to do that same thing, but now I need to shape it, right? This is all stuff we've covered before, but I'm looking for qualitative, does it sound like a good sound, right? What I would consider a good buzz. And for different people, that's going to be different. Some teachers teach an airy buzz, right? Right, really airy. That's not as airy as it should have been, maybe. That's better, right? So that you could spin a windmill, or a pinwheel, excuse me. Well, a windmill would really be something. A pinwheel that might be like right out here, right? You should feel, if you don't have a pinwheel, that's okay. You should feel the air on your hand almost still in a directed sense, if you're going for that. I prefer a bright buzz with almost no air in it. And so that's what's qualitatively going to be true for me. That doesn't mean the other way is wrong. It means that it's what you're looking for in terms of the quality of the sound. And I keep like sort of, this is the quality area of the screen, right, for the sound, and this is the quality area of the screen for the feeling, right? So I want it to be, I'm willing to get partial success in either one. I've talked about this in my lessons all week, so if you're one of my students watching this later, this is what I'm talking about. If I get a buzz that's really, really good, but it's actually pretty difficult to produce, that's great though. I got a lot of this one and not very much of this one, so now let me try again and see if I can take some of the difficulty out of this side without losing anything over here. Or maybe I can balance it better. I'll get a better understanding of the parts, right? So again, I'm not trying to, now I'm overcomplicating it, but what I'm saying is you want both eventually, but it's okay to get partial credit in either one, and then you can work to either get more of that one or you can work to get more of the other one. And if you've got it sounding really great and feeling really great, well then what's the problem, right? So here we go. We're just going to let come what may, anything. So same breath though, right? We're building. So that's pretty aggressive, that's pretty loud, right? But I wanted to keep that same powerful air. And I want that turnaround, that was a little bit snappy on my turnaround. I could be a little more relaxed. So that, again, that's this side, right? It was a little bit harsher physically than I needed to be. And I think I can improve the quality too. So let's just relax the whole thing a little bit and see what that does. Always trying to release at the end. That was a little better maybe. Certainly higher, and it was certainly less airy, but it was also less loud. So let's see if, and we said we'd do that. Let's see if we can get a little airier, or a little less airy still, and a little less snappy on the turnaround. So sometimes going up and down really helps me get my tongue position and my lip posture right so that I can get that buzziest buzz without much effort. And now I'm feeling like it's pretty easy to produce this buzz, even though I'm muscularly pretty active, but I'm not overdoing anything, right? I'm not like holding really super hard or blowing super hard. I'm just getting a balance. And that's, the balance is where things feel really easy to produce, but still also get you a really great result. So if you feel like you're not getting a result, right, then allow these things to try harder, blow harder, use more muscle, use maybe more pressure or less pressure or something, right? Change things over here in the work area, but keep your ear focused on what it is that you want to sound like, right? Don't just guess and then find out what it sounds like, but say, no, that's still not the sound I want. I want this sound. And most of the time, if you're willing to do more work, then your body will try to figure out how to produce the sound that you're looking for, and eventually it will get closer, maybe not all the way. Again, we accept partial successes, right? And if you're paying attention, then when you get a little bit of success in the sound department, then you can pay attention to what you changed in the work department, and you can remember that and try to do that on purpose. And then the other things sort of melt away that you didn't need even though you thought you did, right? And that's when you get to that balanced amount of work that produces a really great sound, okay? So let's put it on the trumpet. And we could do some lead pipe buzzing if we wanted to. But I think one of the things that I think is really valuable to do this way is just breath attack stuff, right? Just any kind of breath attack. So maybe we'll do a little bit of just raw lead pipe. Hopefully everybody's tuning slide comes out. If it doesn't, then you know, you can do one of the vented valve versions if those come out. Usually if the tuning slide doesn't move, then the other ones don't move either, but sometimes they do. So you can do vented valve through the second valve, and you can look at my warm-ups for that, and you can do vented valve through the first valve all the way like taken out and on the B-flat trumpet at least, and those both work, but only the second valve gives you the D natural option to switch between. So, excuse me, that is the lead pipe. We're just going to do some, I call it the raw lead pipe because it's not a vented valve lead pipe, right? And we're just going to try to put this, now we've got a vibration here that's connected to a turnaround. So we're just going to see what that does with this, with now a little bit of reflection from the horn. And again, quality in sound, quality in feeling. I don't want it to be any less good in either of those, but I'll accept partial success and then work towards better. Yeah, so you noticed I started a little too tight. I was doing too much work. I didn't get as nice of a lead pipe tone. It was a little bit, I don't know, squirrely and a little bit tight sounding. I lowered my tongue position, so I noticed what I did, right? Lowered my tongue position. That put a little more work on my corners, but it didn't feel like bad work, and it really improved the tone, right? So the tone improved, and I didn't feel like I was doing that much work. I've just sort of moved the work around. That's a success, right? Is it a perfect success? Well, probably not. I probably can do better than that. But with a little bit of rest here, I can try again. And now I want to start to see if I can do this stuff deliberately, right? With a purpose. I know that my back of my tongue was a little bit lower when I got what I want, what I liked. So now can I start that way, and can I rely on it? And so now I'm building a habit based on something that I've found that's maybe a little more work than I initially wanted to do, but a lot more tone, right? And it turns out that when you start with the thing that you, in other words, if you start off center and then you move to center, whatever that means, so, you know, not quite balanced, and then you find the place that is, that's not as good or efficient as if you just start where it should be, right? Because you do all kinds of other weird stuff in between on the way there to keep things working. So finding where it's really, striking where the iron's hot, so to speak, right? That's a much easier thing to do, and it requires a lot less physical kind of manipulation than starting kind of off and then coming in, or just staying out, right? So I do that all the time, trying to empty my spit on nothing. So okay, and let me move this down a little bit so you can see the end of the bell when at least when I try to play. Okay, so now we can do the low note same way, right? We want a good sound, and for me that means a good reflection, and we want it to be relatively easy. But again, we're looking for that enough work, just like we were talking about the air. We want enough work where things work really well and sound really good. And if we're not doing that amount of work, then we're going to actually end up doing more work overall, because as things change around, we're going to have to do more work to keep things working. I know that sounds weird, but think about it more like almost like momentum. It takes more to get going, but then it's really hard to stop. And if you have a heavier, like, sort of truck or whatever, heavier weight. And so if I'm willing to do a little bit more work up front, then I can just keep that work going, and I don't have to change the amount of work if I'm playing high or low or loud or soft or anything. I feel like I'm just doing the same work, and that's much easier to sustain all day. So and that's just one way to look at it. Again, not everybody agrees with me, and that's fine. But so let's try to do the low note and see where that lies. See, started way off center. So you can see both physically, there's not a ton of movement between those notes for me. There's some. I'm not looking right at me while I'm doing it, so maybe there's more than I think, but I don't feel a big sensation of shifting. And that's because the muscle work and the jaw position are at least relatively similar on the high G and the low E sounds on the lead pipe for me. And so that's, again, I'm just keeping it really simple. I'm just trying to get a good result that feels relatively easy to produce, right? And when I don't get a good result on either one of those, I try to leverage one against the other. I'm willing to sound a little worse to make it a little easier to produce, but if I can, I'd like to keep it sounding good and just try again to see if I can make it feel a little easier. Or if it feels really easy but it doesn't sound good, then I have to be willing to make it feel a little less comfortable at first in order to get some of that sound. And how do you do all this? You keep the sound you want in mind and you just go for it. You demand it, right? It's not a question. It's not a, oh, I wonder if this will sound good, better. And it's definitely not over-calculated with, like, you know, you can try to think about your tongue position. You can try to think about your lip position. And if you do it one at a time, it can be a worthwhile experiment. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you do only that, right, and you have no vision for what you are trying to accomplish by doing so, then how do you know if you got a good result or not? How do you know whether to keep that change? So it's the vision that you have for your trumpet playing, for your sound, is the most important thing here. And then you can also use your imagination to imagine how easy it could be, right? Those are both, so your imagination and your sort of ability to amplify that imagined sound and feeling are how you know you're going in the right direction. So that's the best way I can say it. All right, now we're going to play the trumpet, and we're going to do one of my favorite things, which is just breath attack, medium tones, and they will be breath attack scales is often what I call this, although we're not going to play a specific type of scale. Instead, we are going to play just whatever I feel like is the next one, and you'll see what I mean. I'm just kind of taking a short rest here so that I don't just play. And so, of course, well, we have a couple of people in chat, so if you want to ask me questions, or later on, we're going to do some jazz tunes and go through my jazz methods. So if you have any suggestions as to what tunes to try, I have my phone hooked up. And so anything in the Real Book app, the iReal Pro, is fair game, I guess, even if I don't know it, because the method is how I learn tunes, specific singular tunes. So anyway, right, so I'm just going to play, you'll see what I mean by this. I'm just playing breath attack, so breath attack meaning no tongue. I'm just going to put the air into the horn for the reflection that gets me the note. And that's what I'm trying to find out, right? I don't know that yet today because I haven't played a lot of trumpet yet today. So I'm just guessing at first, but then with 1 point of data, I guess the next point of data, and now I have 2 points of data if it went well. And if it didn't go well, I try again, and I still have 2 points of data, I just don't have 2 successes. And so I'm just trying to find, and if I let's say I get, I start in the middle of the staff and I go up a little bit, and I get to E, and E doesn't seem to be going well. Well, I'm just going to stay on E until I can figure it out, right? So it's breath attack scales, meaning I'm working one direction usually, but you could do it all over the place. You could do it just on one note for a while. Really anything goes, but you're looking for a good quality sound that happens instantaneously, that is fairly easy to produce and reliable. And that's that feeling of ease, right? Is that you know that it's going to happen and you can trust it. And that's what we're building here. So if you feel like you don't have that, this is a great exercise for you. All right, let's try it out. I like to start on B and work my way up for a little while, and then I'm really bad at the low register, and so I have to work harder to get that. And again, anything that doesn't work well in result, it's okay to work harder physically to try to get it to work, right? As long as your vision is all you're really concerned about, that you're trying to get closer to your vision and you're letting your body figure out, you're willing to let it do anything it needs to do to get that vision, and then you can make it more efficient or better or whatever. So here we go. I'm going to start turning this off now that we're playing trumpet, this mic. So not quite getting that B, but we haven't even done any real warming up yet, right? We're just using air, and relatively speaking, those all were about the same E's until I started missing that B. Oh, we've got Boplicity and Song for My Father. For sure, Song for My Father. I don't know if Boplicity is in there. I'm sure it is, but I've never worked on Boplicity. I guess I've never worked on a Song for My Father since high school, though, so let's see what they look like while we wait for here for a second. So you can see, while I got up to that high B, I wasn't quite getting it, so I kept doing a little more work here and there. And as you get higher, everything kind of matters more, right? Like everything is higher stakes. If you move your lip or your tongue position just a little bit, it can really make a huge difference. And so I was trying not to change too much, but if I don't change anything, I'm going to keep getting the same result, right? So mostly I was trying to say, all right, well, the middle of the note sounds fine, so can I just freeze everything there? And I'll just type in bop, huh? Boplicity. Yeah, I'm going to steer clear of this one for now, Michael. Only because if I had my real book, then I could have the melody here, but I'll do Song for My Father. We're not going to play the melodies anyway, but Song for My Father is an easier chart, and not because I'm afraid of the tough charts, although that sounds like what it is, right? But because I don't want to make it too complicated for somebody if they're looking at this and it's the first time we're talking about my my jazz system. So maybe maybe I'll do Song for My Father, and then as we go, I can do Boplicity or something else, and we can skip some steps so that it's not quite so tedious, because there's just a lot of changes is all. Song for My Father is nice and simple. So, but good suggestion. All right, so I did breath attack scales upward, and I'm trying to just get straight to the heart of the note. So I'm going to do this again, and I can also add some tongue onto this, right? I don't want the tongue to disrupt the way that the note starts. So I am going to do breath attack scales again, but now I'm going to add, what I call hatas, right? So I'm going to hata, so just the tongue comes a little bit later, and then as I go either on the same note or up and down or whatever, I'm going to try to sneak the tongue closer and closer to where the note was going to respond anyway. And what you got to be careful about with this kind of exercise is heaving into the note. I don't want to go... See what I mean? I don't want to do that. I want to go ha, 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 which is easy for my voice in that register. Other registers, it doesn't want to respond because my vocal cords are too tight, right? Ha, right? It's just not, you can hear it hit, right? But even in those registers, I still want the air to respond first and then the tongue. And when I'm doing just the breath attacks without the tongue, I also don't want to sneak into it. I just want to turn it around. And that's why we did the lead pipe, right, to practice that. Okay, so here we go again. A little bit more of the same kind of thing. So we're working our way up just because this is easier for me to do. It really gets my muscles activated, and then I don't want to lose that in the middle register, right? So we start in the middle register, it's easier, but then as I move away, I'm feeling like, oh yeah, I've got to keep this somewhere. I got to keep these somewhere, right? I've got to keep the lip roll somewhere. And that's why sometimes I'll miss the note and I'll do a little lip trill. That's me sort of getting it loosened up, back up again. But if you're doing this and you're finding you're airballing as you get higher and higher, well, that's because you're spreading your aperture. And that's why this is a good exercise for you, because you can, what you're trying to do each time you do a medium tone, you're resetting your entire embouchure, making sure that it's not getting spread, right? So that you can find an embouchure that works for all the notes. And that sounds counterintuitive, right? Well, if I reset it, then it's different every time, right? Yes, right, but you're not starting with an embouchure that can't work. You're always finding one that can, and then you can come back down and try to use the embouchure that works for the high range, which is usually the problem for us, right? Or the super low range, which we'll do next. And we try to get all of that to work all together, right? So that's what we're going to start to do now. And we can start also with a little bit of, let's get Song for My Father up again. Right, so this is basically a G minor groove, right? And so let's play some G minor kind of stuff. The first step in my jazz method is to actually be able to play in the key of what you have to play. This is kind of G natural minor, right? Because we've got F7 chords, E flat 7 chord, D7 sus, right? Which is not necessarily an F natural, but it's not an F sharp because it's a sus chord. So we have sort of an open sound, and you'll hear it when we play the tune. It sounds just like G natural minor, and so that's what we'll play, which is essentially B flat major, right? I think. So we'll work our way down now, and I'll just play B flat major for now, and we'll see if we can get all the way down to low G. So you can hear that method that time. I didn't say it beforehand, but I'm going ha, ha ta, ta, and then I'm slurring down to the next note, ta, ta, ha ta, ta, so that I'm just practicing being able to ha ta, like breath attack each note and then add the tongue, and then I'm adding the tongue incidentally with the response. So ha-ta and then ta, but I'm still always going ha, I'm just adding the T where it was already going to respond, and I learned that from the previous note, right? So then I'm slurring down. Why am I doing that? Well, because sometimes I'll spend all day trying to get low A to come out, and if I just would play low B flat, which came out fine, and then slurred down to A, I'd find where it is. It would save me a lot of time. And there's no shame in cheating, right, to find it, as long as I do it enough times to find it, again, deliberately, okay? So we're still listening for a good sound, and I think we're getting a pretty good sound, and we're saying that, well, there's some amount of work being done, but I want it to be the I want it to be efficient. I want it to always work, and or at least as much as I can expect, right? And I want it to be easier and easier, not harder and harder. And a lot of times that means kind of staying the same. It means that as I play a B flat in the staff, that's not different than a low B flat, even if I do have different work happening in different places, right? They are different notes, so it's going to have to be different somehow. But I don't need to necessarily notice that work. Or if I do, it has to be part of my deliberate playing of the low note or whatever, right? And the same thing in the high register. A lot of people will talk about staying relaxed in the high register, and that's because our tendency is to tighten up. And so as we go up, we have to be cognizant of trying to keep things in the same state of relaxation as they were before, which I would not call relaxed for me. But if I tighten up more, then that's not going to be good, right? So, and the same thing in the low register. We tend to sag and flop, sort of let go into the low register. But if I do that, I start to get random results or no results. So I have to remember to keep myself firm and in the same position. And that usually entails more work physically. But because it works the same, in other words, the note comes out the same, I notice it as something that is the same, right? And so your sensation can always be, I call this change to stay the same. And your sensation can always be, yes, it is working the same, so it's all the same. Or, yeah, here's some stuff that I have to remember to change so that it works the same, right? Those are both absolutely valid. And again, I'm trying to keep it all like one thing or another, right? That's kind of the exercise. And then I can do whatever else I want to do on top of this, right? Now I've got a pretty good sense of how me and this horn are working together today, so I could be done. I could just say, all right, well, that was it. You know, that was like a half hour of just breath attacks of different types. But I think I could stand to move around the horn a little bit. So let's do that. And before we do, let me see if I can. Yeah, here we go. So you should be seeing now on screen my chicken scratch handwritten out jazz method. And so here it is, and if I turn this way, it looks like I'm looking at it too. You can't see my cursor though, so I'll just talk through it. The first thing that we need to be able to do is play scales and our modes and arpeggios and our diatonic 7 chords and our scales in thirds. So we can do that, right? There's nothing stopping us from doing that. We can do it relevantly in the key that we have it in here. And like I said, this is B flat major, right, or G minor. And since it's natural minor, I'm just going to go with B flat major, because if I do all those things, I'm going to get all the stuff I want, right? Hopefully. So I want to do 2 octaves because I want 2 octaves worth of range. And you could say, well, Gabriel, what about lip slurs? Yeah, absolutely, we can do some lip slurs, right? Not in those keys, but I want to sort of quickly work my way into these scales, arpeggios, modes, that kind of thing, because I don't want to waste any face, and maybe I want to play through Song for My Father 18 times because it's, you know, coming up tomorrow or something, right? So when you're working your way towards something that's already going to be a lot of playing, then your routine necessarily needs to be a little bit shorter. You can do the stuff later after you've played your gig or whatever it is. You can always do your whole routine later if you have the chops left over for it. But this is one of those kind of things, and I guess now I'm just talking, but this is one of those things that's really important to think about. If you have a big gig coming up, like let's say an audition today, well, okay, then don't play your whole routine. Just get warmed up. Get in your best playing shape and save those chops. You're going to need them, right? You're going to be under pressure. You're not going to do everything perfectly efficiently, even if normally you can play your whole routine and then play your whole audition. No, don't do it. Just get warmed up till you feel like, yep, I can play anything I want to play right now, and then stop. And just keep yourself a little bit warmed up every once in a while. Don't do more playing than you have to do. But if you do that every day, because you always have a rehearsal and you're not going to have an audition every day, hopefully. But if you do that for your band rehearsals, for your quintet rehearsals, for your orchestra rehearsals, because you want to do a good job in front of everybody, well, then you're never going to get better because you don't ever really do your whole routine. You just warm up a little bit and that's it. And so it's okay if you're really good and you just, you never have to work on anything, then that's fine. You just stay where you're at. But if you want to improve, you're going to need to do a little more than just warm up, just get warmed up. And that's what all my routines are about, is improving everything every day that you need to, right? So, but you can do both. You can do a little light warm up just before rehearsal, play your whole rehearsal, and then later on you can do all your routine items, and you still get better that way. You just don't have as much physical and mental stamina when you're doing the routine items, and so you may not get as better as if you did it at the beginning of the day. But for some people it just works better the other way around. So do what works for you. All right. So without further ado, let's do a little bit of light lip slurs first, and then we'll see where we're at. So I can be just sort of checking to make sure this kind of stuff works, right? I don't have to. I'm going to bring my chair over here so I don't. Yeah, there we go. Now we're talking. Move this back down a little bit. All right. So I'm just checking. There's a really good old saying about checking the templates. That's a Charlie Schluter saying. You can find in his book, In Concert, I think. Well, it's not his book. It's somebody else wrote it about him, but it's his book. And I think that's a good way to think about it when you're not trying to, when you're just trying to get ready to do something. When you're not, doing a whole day's routine, you're just checking to see if things work the right way. I really like to get down into it, and if you've seen any of my other videos on this channel, you know that it can get really intensely deep in a very specific subject, and maybe you tune out at that point because it's not your interest. But if I'm just getting ready for a gig, I have a Chicago Blood, Sweat, and Tears kind of orchestra gig coming up in a couple of months, and hopefully we get to do it. And if that's the case, and I'm playing lead, I don't know what part I'm playing yet, but if I end up playing lead, then I'm going to have a shallow mouthpiece, but not too shallow because it's the orchestra, so I can't just play like I play lead trumpet. Sort of a very specialized kind of both orchestral and jazz kind of gig, or rock in this case. And so I'm going to have to warm up very sparingly so that I have a lot of chops to spend, a lot of stamina, because who knows how we're going to rehearse. And if it's like a million high Fs in the trumpet part, which probably it will be at least high Ds and Es, if not higher, then the conductor doesn't care if that's hard. I mean, I don't know the specific conductor, but they don't care. And the section doesn't care. They're like, yeah, it sucks for you. You had to play lead on this, but we need you to play those notes so that we know how to play our notes, right? So I'm going to do a very light warm-up. I'll do a big routine the whole week before, make sure I'm really in good shape, and then any rehearsal or any concert, I'm going to really lightly warm up. In that case, the concert and the rehearsal are on the same day, so even in the rehearsal, I'm going to take it a little bit easy so that I have a lot of gas in the tank for later. All right. So just like that, that's about all we need to do for lip slurs. So let's play some scales. I'm going to play all my B-flat modes, just because I said that that's one of the things we should do, and I want to show it. But then we also want to play all the B-flat diatonic modes, so to speak, and that'll help us with Song for My Father. Well, no, there's an F. No, that's right. Yeah, B-flat still works. Just making sure. So I'll show you what I mean by that. Here's the two ways. I can't back up anymore. Well, I'll stand back up. May as well. I was going to sit down, but All right. So here we go. So these are, so I can do the modes starting on B flat. And this is the way I like to do them because it makes me think harder. So that's why I start with pentatonic. Let's see if we can get something in between here so I don't have to keep turning this off. Okay, so can I delete this person? Okay. Just playing around it doesn't make as much sense to do these in thirds because they're so skippy. So I do them in some kind of pattern that's not just up and down, right? I start with up and down, make sure I get the notes, but then I got to do B flat minor pentatonic. I like to exploit that tritone at the bottom of it. And then I'm just doing the major modes, so to speak, right? The church modes. So if you start with Lydian, then you just can add a flat, add a flat, add a flat, add a flat. And the flats that you add are in the order of the flats that you would add for key signatures. And so if you know your key signatures, then you don't have to read. I'm not reading off of anything. I'm just playing, right? That's what we want. So... oh, sorry, and I'm going to do them in thirds because I don't want to just go straight up and down. If you're doing these for the first time, then maybe straight up and down and one octave is appropriate, right? But if you already know those, then start trying to mess with them because you're not going to usually play your scales just straight up and down. That's just for practice, right? And if you don't practice other iterations, then you're not going to do very well. So. So that's sharp 4, right? Is what Lydian is from, as opposed to major. Now we flat that E, so we go back to major. Right, now I'm going to flat one more, so after E flat is A flat, right? So this is going to be Mixolydian. Now we're going to do Dorian, which is flat 2, right? Sorry, flat. Yeah, no, I was right. Flat 3, flat 7. I don't know what I'm talking about. Phrygian is flat 2. It's hard to do without my sheet out. I never think about the names. I just play the right sounds. And ultimately, you want to know both, right? If somebody says play a Dorian scale starting on E, you want to be able to do it right away. Likewise, if somebody says play a major scale starting on something, you should be able to do it, right? So it's the same thing. But anyway, this is, what did I say, Dorian, right? Now we get natural minor or Aeolian, which is just the one that we were looking for. This is really B flat minor, sorry. Now we're going to flat the 2. This is going to be Phrygian. So sorry, that time we flatted the what was left, the G flat, right? Which is the 6th scale degree. So now we're going to flat the D. The C. if we keep going, then we should get Locrian, which is going to be, in this case, an F flat, right? I think. Locrian is just a major scale starting on the 7th scale degree, so that was B major starting on A sharp, if you will, right? Then I like to do the symmetrical scales as well, so B flat. You can do the synthetic scales that you know, which are actually just minor modes. So you can do, for instance, if you read any jazz theory books, you'll see things like Lydian Mixolydian, right, which is a sharp 4 and a flat 7. I'll do these just in scale order so that I don't get lost. Right, and that's really just a minor mode. It's a minor mode of, well, let's see what it is, right? So whenever you find a part of a whole tone scale, you're talking probably about melodic minor. And if you find part of an octatonic scale, then you're probably talking about the other half of some type of scale. You don't know which one. And if you ever find an augmented second, then you're definitely talking about harmonic minor. So in this case, we don't have any augmented seconds in the scale, so we're probably talking about some sort of natural or melodic minor, and in this case, it's melodic, right? So it's F melodic minor. Right? So this is what modes are. They're things that you know starting in places that you don't normally start them, and they're actually more useful than the home row, so to speak, scales, because you very rarely just play a scale starting on the tonic and ending on the tonic an octave higher or something like that, right? And it's our ear that doesn't get it. Our fingers have to know the major scales first, right? But we need to practice them in different ways so that we're ready to play them the way that composers actually use them. Okay. Now, what does that have to do with jazz? Well, we are kind of composers during the improvisatory time, right, in a piece. So I need to be ready to play sounds that I hear over the changes, and that's what we're going to talk about as we get into jazz. So I'm trying to do like about an hour on this, and then I'll... So as we transition into the jazz world, we have one more thing to do, right? We said, I'll look at this again. That was modes. That was all of our B-flat modes. We just want to do one of those every day. One starting note, all the modes. Oh, and I didn't even finish. I'm sorry. I will finish here. We'll do. That was a constructed scale, like I said. That's really a minor mode. So, and what is that even? That's fourth mode. Yeah, fourth mode F minor is what that is. So now we're going to just play whole tone, octatonic, and hexatonic. And these I like to just play up and down. When I feel really smart, I can do them in thirds, but sometimes it gets away from me. So I'll play some kind of pattern that I can think of. Just around, right? And then... just the two different octatonics. If you don't know octatonic, whole tone is just whole steps. Octatonic is a half step and then a whole step, but you want to do the one that starts with a whole step and then a half step as well. So there's two for each singular note that you might play. And then there's a third that doesn't include the note that you're starting with, and that's all of the octatonic scales. Now there's hexatonic. Hexatonic has 4 total scales, and again, 2 of them are have your note in them, and 2 of them don't have your note. They skip over your note. So I think that's right. Somebody check my math on that. But so that's a minor second and a minor third, right? That's a half step and a minor third, back and forth. Close enough. So why would you practice those? Well, they're just sounds. They're just sounds that you can play. And you should practice any... A lot of people are concerned in the jazz world about whether or not you should play completely original material all the time. And they generally agree that, yes, you should try to play... You should be as original as you can be. But you have a very low chance of playing something that you've actually never played before until you've been doing improvisation almost exclusively for many, 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 many years. And I don't know that I'll ever get there. I've heard people talk about that they really just try to play new things on the bandstand, and they do that. But they usually are people who've been playing jazz for 20 or 30 years already. So I do want to play original ideas, but it's okay if I practice those ideas outside of a concert context, right? And that's what a lot of the greatest jazz musicians did in particular the sort of bebop and post-bop eras, is that they would actually practice a lot after the gigs on sounds that they remember from the gigs, right? And try to incorporate those into their sounds. And so I don't think anybody's arguing we shouldn't do that. And our scales are sort of a basic part of that. All right, so let's look at the system again. We've got diatonic 7 chords. Okay, well, in G minor, or in B flat major, since we said it's the same, as long as we go all the way around, I'm going to just play, I'm going to arpeggiate every chord that's in there, all right? So I can do this in triads, or I can do it in 7 chords. I'm going to do it in 7 chords, and if I make a mistake, I'm sorry. So we're going to play, what does this mean? It's the B flat major, right? Those notes in that scale, and I'm just skipping over every other note and going all the way up so that I have 4 notes stacked in thirds. And then I'm going to go back down, so that'll be B flat, D, F, and A natural, right? And I'll go back down, and then I'll play C, which is the next note in the scale, and I'll play C, E flat, G, and B flat, and then back down, because those are the notes. See what I'm saying? So if you need to, you can write this out. Write out a scale first, and then just, we call this tertian stacking, but it's really just diatonic 7 chords, okay? So. There you go, and I can do it back down as well. I don't know, I probably won't be able to get to the end, but there's 2 ways to do it back down. You can do the same chords starting on the same notes, but just sort of their inversion. So a B flat major major 7 chord is still going to be what I play on B flat. But you run into a problem that your next to last note is your next note as well, so you have to sort of do it in an odd way. See, right? That's what it is. And I'm already out of notes. Or you can do the same, you can do whatever, if that was the 7th, right? So you're still in thirds that way. I mean? So I had to switch octaves. But you can do it either way, or you can just decide you're going to do them up and you're done, okay? So, right. So we haven't played any jazz yet. We're doing the parts that come before it. So we've done the modes, we've done arpeggios, which I could just do the arpeggios, like I said. I just skipped that and did diatonic sevenths. And then scales and thirds, we've done all that. So guess what? We're ready for actually playing this chart. Now, I don't have the changes for you because they're on my phone. And, well, I'll just tell them to you. How about? And we can look up this. So what are we doing? We're doing the chord tones. I keep pretending like you can see my cursor, but you can't. We're doing the chord tones. So that means the roots, the thirds, the fifths, the sevenths, and maybe the ninths. We're going to leave the ninths out for now. We don't need them. But we do definitely have 7 chords in this. And the idea of this is that I need to make sure that I know what these chords are made of so that I don't play a really rotten note. You can sell a wrong note in jazz, yes, and a lot of people will tell you that there's no wrong notes in jazz, but that's not really right. You can absolutely step on a chord and just absolutely obliterate it, and it just sounds very amateurish, right? So, like for instance, I can't play a G sharp in the first chord because it's a G minor 7 chord. G sharp is the flat 9, so maybe I can sell that somehow, but generally it's going to sound really clashy with that chord, right? Or a B natural too, right? Same thing. But if that's a sound that I want, I just have to hear it and I have to sell it. So in that sense, there's not a wrong answer, but you have to really know what you're doing to play like that. And people do, and I love it, by the way. I love when people play out in a really creative way that just comes right back in, and you're like, how did they do that? Oh gosh, Clay Jenkins is one of my favorite that way, that he just has this way to play out that it just blows my mind, and then he just slips right back in, and analyzing it, I can figure out what he did, but it's just incredible. And sometimes I just can't figure it out, and that's the best, because then I'm just impressed, right? I can listen to it more until I can figure it out, and that just gives me more goosebumps. So anyway, these chords are G minor 7 is the first one. So what is the root of that? Well, it's going to be G. And then the minor 7, minor refers to the type, the quality of the chord, right? So that's going to be G and then a B flat, right? And then a D, which is a normal fifth. There's no altered fifth here. And then a 7, which is F. And so we're going to hear that, and we're going to play that. And then the next chord is an F7, F dominant 7th if you're classical theory, right? And so this one here, oh, you can't see my cursor still. F7 is F, A, C, and E flat, right? E flat 7 is the next one, and that's E flat, G, B flat, and D flat, right? So that D flat's going to be important because that's new. That's not in the key. And then we have D7 sus. What is that? Well, it's a sus chord, doesn't have a third, instead it has a fourth. And sometimes it means other things, but in this case, so it's going to be a D, and then instead of an F sharp, it's going to be a G. That's the 4th scale degree of the D sound, right? And then we're still going to have an A, although sometimes that's omitted, and we're still going to have a C natural because it's a D7 chord, right, of some type. And so D, G, A, and C, and then we go back to G minor. And those are all the chords that are in here. So let's begin. I'm going to do this along with the headphones, or the play along, and I'm just going to start, right, with, I'm going to turn this off so that it doesn't blow everybody out of the water with additional sounds. But I'm just going to start with all the roots. And then I'm just going to let it play back around, and I'll play the thirds the second time through, right? And then I'll play the fifths, and then I'll play the sevenths, and then we'll be done, okay? It shouldn't take too long. And I don't know what... this is a pretty quick tempo, so it should go pretty fast. And I might make some mistakes, and so then we'll talk about that at the end. This is the F. It's now third. All right, so that was all of, let's go back to this. That was all of the roots and then all of the thirds. It started a little late, so I'm sorry if that was confusing at the beginning, but it just takes a second for the Bluetooth to connect, and it's a little longer than I would like. So we'll try to get back to it before it disconnects again, and otherwise we'll just restart as many times as we need. So okay, that was all the roots, all the thirds, all the fifths, and then all the sevenths. The sevenths sound weird, right? Well, that's because they're a whole step away from what we're hearing usually in the bass, and but they're part of the color of the chord, and so are the thirds, right? That's the structure of the chord comes from the fifth, the open fifth, the root in the fifth, but the color of the chord comes from the third, and then primarily the third, and then the seventh gives it additional color, right? So we might want to use those notes a lot just to show that we're really hearing the chords. Not to show off like we know the chords, but in other words, that's really what this chord is about, and not just some kind of generic F chord, but it's an F7 chord, or some kind of generic E flat chord. No, it's E7, E flat 7, and that doesn't make sense in that. I want to really lay on that D flat maybe, because D is next, and D came before, and so maybe that's the color that I'm looking for, right? So anyway, so that's the first step. Why are we doing that? Well, because it also gave us the root motion of the entire chord structure, right? The whole time, I know that it goes from G down to F, and then down to E flat, and then down to D, and then back to G, right? And then the sort of B section goes F up to G, back down to F, E flat, D, and then back to G. So this is a pretty simple song structure, but now I've done the contour of the line 4 times, right? So I know kind of I know what to expect. My ear understands how this piece goes, and that's really going to pay off as we continue. So okay, so what's next? Well, outline chords. Well, that's good. I started to do that a little bit on one of them, right? And I sort of give you 2 ways to do that here. One of them is to just arpeggiate the chord, and that's going to work most of the time. There's another way that I left out, actually. So here's the ways we can do it. If it's a full bar chord, I can swing, or in this case, there's sort of a Latin feel. I always want to stay within the feel, of course, right? So I can go, right? That fills up a bar. Right, so now we're sort of getting the idea. Now, if it's two chords in one bar, I'm just going to have to go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, or yeah, right? That's the only way I get all of them. Or I can do just the triads, if that's more comfortable, and I just omit the 7, right? And I have to practice this stuff before, out of time, right? I'm just working on this now. This is what I would do. I know I'm about to arpeggiate the chords. And why? Well, because I want, as I'm playing a line, I want to anticipate everything that's at least in the chord, right? I might not want to play in, or I might not want to play just the notes in the chord, but I definitely need to be aware of them and where they are and what isn't there, right? That D7 sus is not an F sharp in there. So if I play an F sharp in there, like I can play the F sharp in the D7 chord later, but not in the sus. And if I do that, I need to expect it to sound bad. And that's what we're working on here. Plus, we really want to get these chords under our fingers. And ultimately, I want to get my eyes off the page. I don't want to have to look at this. I want to just know the sounds. So hopefully I can do a stare into the abyss version of this when we get to the end of it. Right? So, okay, here we go. I'm going to try to get through it in one go. So that this is also AAB form, right? So I'm doing 2 A's and then 1 B, and it's back to the top. So I'll do that, right? Here we go. So not absolutely perfect, obviously. I tried to play a D sus on that on D7. It should have been. And I also played around a little bit more. And this sounds so pedantic, and it is an exercise, right? But if you feel like you can have a little fun with it, there's nothing stopping you to do that. Now, if you can't play the chords, and you're having fun with it instead of learning what you're supposed to learn, that's a problem. But otherwise, it's supposed to be fun, right? That's the whole point of it. So, all right, we outlined the chords. Now, we get to do what I call Aebersol / Coltrane. So the Aebersol book has written out the modes that go with the scales. And we could do that here, right? I'll put it back on full screen. So they have like little hash note markings sometimes. At least I remember that. I have to get my Aebersol books out there at school now. But so, okay, I can play all the notes that are in the key, right? So and I gave away what the other thing I do is, which is I want to play in the key. So is this in one key? Well, maybe I could say it's in E flat major some of the time, right? Or E flat dominant, which puts it in A flat major, right? So you can't really call it just one key, and it doesn't have to be in one key. It has local keys, right? So that's what the modes are for. If I'm playing F7, right, and then I'm going to E flat 7, well, okay, an A natural and an E natural, E flat 7 chord, right? They don't really belong in the same key because the D flat from the E flat 7 doesn't jive with the FAC in the F7 chord. So I'm going to have to shift my understanding there, but sort of all within the context of G minor, right? Natural minor. Sorry, I played E naturals earlier. That's an F Mixolydian, right? So we played G natural minor, or Aeolian, F Mixolydian. What is the E flat? Well, guess what? That's our Lydian Mixolydian right there, right? We're going to play probably A natural still. We're not going to play A flat. But that's why we practice that, because it comes up in jazz. Like I said, you get it from the natural, from the minor modes if you practice those. But there are only a few that we use in jazz typically, and so you can just look at a jazz theory book and practice the ones it tells you to, right? All right. So, but what I like to do instead is what I call a Coltrane style, which I'm stealing from the third chorus of Giant Steps. He does 1, 2, 3, 5. 1, 2, 3, 5 of the chords. So and it gets you most of the structure of the chord, and that's in a half bar. Or I do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 3, 2, 1, which again has the same amount of structure but takes twice as long. I don't know what to do with the D7. I guess that works. Or we can just arpeggiate it again. That's probably what we'll do. And that way I get some of the in-between notes. And again, doing it all with the play along, so that I make sure that I'm practicing sounds, right? If I hear a sound, if I try, let's say I play an F sharp in there to try to play it like the rest of them, I'll do it once, actually. I'll play that D7 sus as if it was a regular D7 in this scale pattern that I just described, and you'll hear how it doesn't really sound right, and that's what I'm looking for. I want to see if I know the in-between notes correctly, or the E flat 7 chord, right? If I played an A flat, which would make sense for the E flat 7 chord by itself, well, that doesn't really make sense for the overall, and I'm going to notice the clash maybe with the bass line or the piano, and just overall I'm going to feel bad playing an A flat. Or the best case scenario is I notice how hip something sounds even though it's not right, and maybe I want to use that. Okay, so here we go again. Now we're playing what I call Aebersol/Coltrane exercise. See if it gets. Sorry, I didn't turn off the vocal mic, but so you can see why this is starting to become melodic in a way that I want to play more. I'm starting to go like, oh yeah, I could play something really cool here instead of this dumb exercise. All right, so let's look at the next step. Now, why are we doing all these? Well, if you're a seasoned jazz expert, maybe you can skip to the end and you already can play great solos and you know how you want to work on your changes. So great, do that. This is not for advanced jazz people necessarily, although it's as advanced as I've ever gotten. But I know there are better methods out there. Chief among them may be triad pairs, which is a different way to practice, sort of away from the changes, and then apply them to the changes. There's also, like I said, there's a guide tones method, which this kind of includes later on. Not exactly, but kinda. Let's just say kinda, right? But looking for guide tones That's a different method as well. And you can look all these up online, and they're all very simply explained, as simply as they can be explained. There's also Coltrane changes, where you apply the giant steps type changes to basic changes, and you kind of play out in that way. That's also a really cool thing to do, very advanced. And you have to, I can't do it. My mind is not quick enough for that on the fly. But anyway, so okay, so what's the next step? We've done the Ebersol Coltrane exercise. Now we need to play a bass line. And some of these are interchangeable, but these will go by really quick. So I'm going to do a couple of these in a row without stopping. So the bass line is just me playing a bass line. You can hear there's a bass line in the mix here, in the play along. I'm just going to play one on top of that. And what is a bass line that's not what we've done already? Well, I'm allowed to play other notes. I'm also allowed to play pedal points, in other words, not change notes when I feel like that sounds appropriate. But you generally want to give away, if you were playing bass, you would want to have some structural elements as well as a little bit. It's like it's melodic enough for it to sort of tie things together, but it's structural enough to give the soloist kind of the idea of what's happening, right? So that what they're hearing the band play makes sense with what they're expecting. So it's kind of in between soloing and playing these chords, right? So that's what we want to start with. Then we're going to play what I call a smooth melody. What is that? Well, we'll do just those two, and then I'll talk about one note samba. A smooth melody is, I'm going to start on something. In this case, I'll just tell you it's going to probably be B flat, okay? I'm starting in the chord note in one of the chords, and I'm going to go to the nearest note in the next chord, so the smoothest transition from chord to chord, right? And it might go upward, it might go downward, even if the roots don't do that, but it's going to give me a sense of playing through the chords despite their contour root motion, right? And sometimes it will follow it and sometimes it won't, and so you'll see what we're doing there. But I'm just playing the next closest note, and sometimes I'll switch notes just because it's a little more interesting. Maybe I'm going back and forth between the same two notes, and nobody wants to hear more of that. And ideally, you would do all the permutations. You'd start on G and go to the, maybe, let's see what's next, is F or A, dealer's choice, right? And so let's say I go to A, and then the E flat 7 chord, well, that's going to be a B flat in there, right? And then the D7 chord, well, that's going to be an A again. And then the G minor 7, that's going to be back to B flat again, right? And then I'm stuck on B flat, so I might want to switch if I'm just doing it quick and dirty. But I want to do all of that starting on G, starting on B flat, starting on D, and starting on F, right? And then that way I get all the smooth melodies. And sometimes, since there are two choices, I might do it a couple of times, right? It's a really good way to hear the changes around what you're playing. So that's what we're going to do now, bass line and smooth melody, and then we'll come back to this. All right, here we go. So I made one mistake there and didn't play the closest note, and so I tried to adjust. But you see what I mean? Where that's not a very interesting solo or anything, but it does play through the changes in a smooth way that allows me to hear how the harmonies shift around what I'm playing. So I think that's really important. And I might do that a long time just to get the sound of the piece really, really in my ear, in my head, in my anticipation, right? What you have to do when you play a solo that's really good is anticipate what sound you're about to hear the rhythm section play and play into that sound. And so that's why we're doing all these steps, because I want to do this a bunch of times, and every time I do it and interact with it, I am learning better what these changes ought to sound like. So, okay. So now, what is the next step? Well, the next step is one-note samba. Now, this is an important step if you are somebody who says, okay, yeah, I get it. I know all my scales. I know all my arpeggios. I've played maybe the tune that you're playing is a blues and it's only in one key all the time. So I've played all the diatonic 7 chords in that Gabriel. I am ready to play, but I just don't know what to play. You know, I don't know what to play. How am I supposed to know? Well, there's two answers to that. One is listen to more people improvising in the type of context that you're interested in doing, right? You shouldn't have any worries about knowing exactly what you want to play if you've heard a lot of great players playing like that, right? So you want to play like them, in other words, right? But sometimes they mean, I don't know what notes to play. I don't know what the right notes are. And the bass line helps that a lot, and the smooth melody helps that a little bit, but the one-note samba, I find, helps the most. And you'll notice in the sheet that these are interchangeable. You might want to do the one-note samba first, and then the smooth melody. It just depends on your sort of where you're coming from. But, so what is the one-note samba? Well, it's a tune that we could do that's actually a pretty complicated bridge. It has a chromatic bridge. But it's such a great tune. But no, we're just going to play one note all the way through. So I'm going to just pick a note. And so if anybody wants to pick one for me, you can tell me in the chat. I'll do it a couple of times if you want. But since it'll take 24 seconds, 26 seconds, I have it on delay, then I'm just going to pick one for now. So I'm going to start on C, okay? And we'll see. And what's going to happen is, and you'll feel this in the audience as well, you're going to wish I was not playing a C some of the time. In fact, kind of a lot of the time, right? Only the F chords and the D chords really will sound okay. So all the G chords, that'll sound wrong. And you'll be like, oh, please, can you just play any other note? No, sorry, I can't. And we'll do it a couple of times. I'll play C, and then maybe I'll play B natural, right, which is never going to sound right. And you'll be like, oh, please play B flat, please, please, please. Okay, well, right. What that does is if you're the one doing it or listening to it, you know exactly what notes to play, right? You know you want it to be a half step lower or a half step higher than what you're hearing, and that's when you know, okay, yes, I have sounds that I want to play in the changes, and it makes you do that. All right, here we go. So C first. Awful, right? Really terrible stuff. But you know you want it to be a different note, B flat most of the time, right? Or C, a bunch of the other times. And that's just to put it in, right, into the chords. That's not even as a passing to somewhere else. It doesn't mean I can't ever play a B natural the whole time I'm playing this tune. Maybe I want to do a tritone substitution for the F chord, and so then I play B dominant seventh to do that, right? B natural. Okay, I guess if that's a sound I hear, then I'll play a B natural. But the one note samba makes you feel like you wish other notes were happening. So, okay, what are the final steps? Well, again, 7 and 7A, these are also interchangeable, and that is either play one lick or just overall a simple solo. They're kind of the same, and that's why they're not interchangeable. They're kind of one and the same. But I'm just going to play a very simple motive, and then I'm going to try to build on that motive. And if you don't know what a motive is, it's just a simple set of notes that kind of has an order of just kind of like a part of a scale or something, right? A motive can be a rhythm. A motive it almost always has rhythm. It also can be a construction of intervals, right? So just a set of a sound of a couple of notes, right? Oh, I'm glad somebody's heard the jingle bells. I like to quote Christmas tunes in all my tunes, in all my jazz solos, because I think it's funny and I'm not very good. So there you go. But so I'm gonna give you my motive up front. That's a rhythm with some notes, right? And it's a construction. But I'm not gonna honor that exclusively. I can do that motive. I can do it backwards. Right, that's the same rhythm, but the notes are backwards. Or, let's see, what it would be. Right, that's the same note pattern, but the rhythm is backwards. Or I can do it in different modes, right? When I get to the F7 chord, right, I could do it there. Or I can do it. See what I'm doing? I'm just putting it into the key of whatever the chord is, into the mode, I should say, of whatever the chord is. And I might play wrong notes sometimes, but I'm going to try to save the day by I'm just going to keep using this motive, this one. What did I say? Let's put it back up. One lick only, right? This is a lick. It's not the lick, da 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 da, right? But that's one of the reasons that the lick came to be. It's very easy to show that's 1 2 3 4 5 1 2 3 4 da 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 da, right? 2 7 1 of something, right? So you might not start on the root, but it gives you a good sense of the chord, and it's very easy because it's part of something that we practice a lot, which is a scale and a triad, right? So that's what I'm doing here, okay? And I'll play a simple solo with one motive, and then I'll start to develop that. So I might let it go through a couple of times. I'm also going to use a lot of space because I don't want to play anything that isn't one of those things that I can't already hear. If I can't hear it, I can't play it. So I'm not going to play until I come up with the sound over the chord of the thing I'm about to do. And then I still might be wrong, but I don't want to go faster than my ear and my fingers can handle. Okay, here we go. that was a simple solo that I almost immediately I started adding a little bit of notes to, just to make it kind of hang together better. But I kept my sights on the simple motive. And as I got more and more away from that, it was actually harder and harder to go back by force. And that would mean that you're not playing just a kind of pre-thought out solo. You're already starting to let her rip, so to speak. You're playing new things, different things that I've practiced for sure, but not the thing that I started off with, right? And that's okay. I might play one motive for a phrase and then come up with a new motive and play that for half a phrase and then another one, and then maybe go back to the first one if it makes sense. And I'm not trying to do this on purpose, it's what I'm hearing, right? So that's what you have to ultimately practice with these things, right? So, okay, Michael said boplicity, and I don't know if I can do that one, but we're going to look at it and see if it's one that I can fast track for you. I know. This is one of those things where, like, I know the melody to boplicity. I know I could play it, but I can't recall it until I hear it again. And I'll go, oh yeah, right, this tune. Oh, thanks, Dad. He said, good job. So that's the kind of idea, right? We'll go slow on. How about slowly on boplicity? And this has a lot more extended chords in it, right? So we've got. I'll show it. Maybe I can show it to the camera, and you can sort of see it. See if it will. Where is it in focus? It's way over here. There we go. And if I get closer, I have to get further this way. So you can sort of see it. I'm not gonna. You don't need to. But there's a lot of sharp 11s and sharp 5 and stuff like that. And well, so I need to figure that out, right? And there's sometimes the idea is like, okay, well, what really is G7 sharp 5? What is that? Well, normally G7 would be what? G, B, D, and F. So now what do I got? G, B, D sharp, and F. So what is that? Well, it's kind of like E flat augmented with a 2 in there, right? And we'll kind of be able to hear that, I think, if we listen through the changes. So, and that's what I'm going to do first. If I have to play a tune in, this happened to me, in fact, since my dad is on the stream now, I practiced some changes. Actually, maybe I'll do those instead of boplicity because I need to still practice them. So there's a tune called, let me find it, hold on. When I Fall in Love. Yeah. And it's a really beautiful ballad, okay? When I Fall in Love. Let me find, okay, let's do it this way, because this is near the end of the stream. Sorry, I'm not going to do boplicity, but this is a way better idea suddenly. Okay, let's find When I Fall in Love. When I Fall, okay, there it is. All right, so these changes are really not that bad. They're a little bit on the long side maybe, right? But there's a lot of repetition. It's an AA, wait, that's, oh, sorry, ABAC is the type of, is that it? Yeah, that's it. So it's just, we'll play it once, and I'll do some of the things that we've been doing, right? And just get a sense of, it's like when you see a break dancer, right? And they get on the floor, and they don't immediately go down on the floor and start spinning around. They do this weird thing with their feet where they get like a sense of the space and where the edges are and how tacky the surface is with their tennis shoes, right? And then they go into their routine, whatever freestyle dance they want to do. Well, that's kind of what we're doing here. We want to get our sea legs, and then I'll tell you the story about why I had to figure this out in about 40 minutes. So this is the regular When I Fall in Love, and here we go. Oh, sorry. melody, right? And then maybe looking up. Are normal, and the speed of changes, more importantly, that is normal. I messed up some stuff in there, but I just tried to play around them, get my sea legs about it, right? All right, that's one. Now, the Raleigh Daly version of When I Fall in Love, the changes look like this. See all those extra things in there? There's altered chords all over the place. Everything's a sharp 11. They're not the same root chords anymore, so the root motion has changed because the altered chords are already giving you some of the information, right? And here's what's worse about it. It's not a ballad anymore. Let's see. It went. Right, so it's about 160. I'm going to go 140, just because I can do it. All right, so let's listen to this one. I'm just going to listen to it. B flat, D13, G minor, B minor, B flat minor, D flat minor, C7, F, E. B flat sus, F, C, B flat, D sharp 9, G minor, B flat 13. See what I'm saying? That's why AlleyReal B is such an important app for people who are amateurs like me in this field, because I learned about this. I practiced this as a ballad for a month, and I had everything worked out, how I was going to get from chord to chord and what kind of scale I was going to play and everything. And then we got to Montana where I was supposed to play it, and we went to the rehearsal, which was right before the gig, of course. It was like 2 hours earlier than the gig in the venue. And so I went up to play my tune, and I was like, okay, yeah, like, not too slow. And they were like, yeah, okay. And so they started off, and they're like, it was like, ba-da-da-da-da, ba-da-da-da-da-da. It's because it's an up-tempo chart, the way that he wrote it. And I just never bothered to look. I just knew the tune so well from the, other people who've played it in the past. I just made the assumption. I never questioned it, that it was not a ballad anymore. And I must have heard my dad do this arrangement before, but it just never clicked. So all of a sudden I went, oh no, I have to learn this tune 4 times faster than I've ever played it, and these changes are just impossible. And of course I folded on the gig. I tried to make sure it didn't sound too much like that to the audience or the band, but I had to take like 3 or 4 choruses on this, I think, and I just kept getting lost. I just couldn't, I wasn't ready for that, right? So the app, iRealB, makes it possible for me to not go 140 and still try to get something done, right? So let's try to go 100, and we'll do some of the stuff that we did. Now, we didn't talk about altered chords. Altered chords have both kinds of thirds and both kinds of fifths. That's one way to look at them, right? And so you can play up a half step melodic minor, basically. So D7 alt, right? D alt, altered. That's because it has, so if you think about that, both kinds of thirds is F sharp and F, right? Right? And both kinds of fifths, well, that's A and A flat. Oh, I just trauma. No, sorry, sharp 5 and flat 5 and not regular 5, I guess. I'd have to look that up now that I say that. But I know that's the trick. I don't know that I always do it very well, but it's easy to come up with part of that, right? So in a harmonic minor scale or a melodic minor scale, you've got part of it is whole tone and part of it is octatonic, is diminished. So if you want to play, that's fine. Or you can play, well, that's also fine, right? I believe. So you can play whole tone on the major 7, or you can play octatonic on the root. And again, why, like, you have to kind of know these tricks. I hate tricks, but you have to know what's in that chord, right? So when we play this slowly, that's the kind of stuff I'm going to be trying to do. Is try to figure out what the heck all of these notes are, right? So we're going to start off F major 7 sharp 11. What the heck is that? Well, it's sharp 11 is the tritone, so it's 11 is the 4th. You can subtract, what is it, 9 or no? 11, 10, 9, 8, 7. Yes, we're at 7 because the octave is 8. So you can just subtract 7. So anyway, but the 11, you just have to know the 11 is the 4th, the 13th is the 6th, the 9 is the 2nd, right? And so yeah, and that makes sense that 9 plus 2 is 11, and if it's the 2nd, then 3rd and 4th. Anyway, jazz. This is not jazz theory. This is just how to like count by numbers. But okay, so sharp 11 is going to be a B natural, right? And a major 7 is E. So, and again, if you look at all of this on a piece of paper, then if you envision that chord a different way, then okay, so be it, right? You could look at that as, let's see, major 7 sharp 11, right, is F, A, C, E, and then there's a B in there. And because it's sharp 11, we can assume there's a 9 as well, so that's going to be G and B, right? So I could play E minor. I could play E sus, right? Yeah, I could play E sus. So there's a lot of other things you can hear, and again, when you practice, that might be the kind of thing you want to do. Okay, let's go through these, and I'll just hack my way through them, and then I'll try to play one chorus at 100 BPM, and we'll that way I'll show you kind of me getting my C legs. And I would actually even in the iReal Pro app, you can highlight a passage and have it repeat it so you can practice it, and that's what I did on this chart. Okay, here we go. See if it. So, glued to the changes a little bit, and definitely waiting for a change, and then listening and not, instead of anticipating, right? But I haven't looked at this in 4 years now, I guess, and that's that. I sort of showed you at least one run through of me trying to get a little sense of what's going on. You can hear the places where I'm really not comfortable, but you can also hear me figure out pretty quickly that C was a safe note a lot of the time. And you can very easily see when C is not going to be a safe note, like the A flat minor chord, or even some of the G chords, G major chords, of which there are a couple. C still kind of works out okay, just because you're passing through it going to somewhere else, and it's so chromatic that as long as you hit the next chord, it's okay. So C tended to be a really nice note, but then it also made my solo really boring because I kept leaning on it. So this would be a great example of me not knowing these changes well enough, and so I need to go slower and do it in sections, just like I would practice anything, any piece of music, right? We've done a ton of chunking on this channel. We've done a ton of slow practice, of singing. I didn't even talk about the other ways to get better at improvisation, right? Can you sing a solo that sounds good over these changes, and then can you record that, and can you transcribe your sung solo? You'll probably come up with some really good licks that you didn't know you had in you. And you just can't play them, but you can sing them, and you can transcribe them, and you can practice those, and then you can play them. And practice them in all 12 keys, you can use them in all your tunes, right? So a sung solo is a really good... transcription of other people's solos is also a good way to find some new licks that you really love and work them in there. And then studying jazz theory is an important part of it that we've talked a lot about today by accident, but just kind of knowing what something is, like, okay, a great example is in this tune I have F major, major 7 into B13. Well, B13 is just a tritone sub for F major, major 7, right? With one very notable exception, and that is the E natural. So the thing that changes between two chords is what I have to know intuitively, right? And that's, if it's not intuitive, then I have to practice it until it is. So that's plenty of this stuff today. It's already 5 o'clock, almost 10 after, and I only started 10 minutes late. So we got back to a 2-hour stream, and we had a little bit of interaction in there. Let's play one out, right? Something that I actually know better. Normally I would do. Darn it, I keep pushing the wrong button. Normally I would do something like giant steps, which you find a way to practice these things, and this is how I taught myself to play. Is I had to find a way around giant steps, and so I did it super duper slow every single night at the end of the day. After all my good trumpet playing was done, all my routine stuff, all my practicing, my etudes, practicing for gigs, I did all of that first, and then when I was done for the day, I just said, well, okay, 10 more minutes, and I'll just play through giant steps a couple of times and just try to play exactly the method that we just did. And for a long time, I was stuck on play all the thirds. I couldn't play the fifths, I couldn't play the sevenths, I could play the note names that it says, right? But I couldn't play all the thirds, so I just stayed on that step for a while. And I would do it until my face fell off. So it was usually more like 20 minutes instead of 10 minutes or 5 minutes. And then eventually I started to get used to the changes, and it worked out. So anyway, let's find one that's in here. If I knew the melodies to some of these a little bit stronger, then I would do them. Well, we can always just do. Where's all my. I tried to get out of my comfort zone, and so all the tunes in my recent tunes. There's Autumn Leaves. Let's do Autumn Leaves. Let's make sure it's in the right key. I think that's the right key. Yeah, G minor. And we'll start it, and then we'll stop it, and we'll start it again, so it's connected. Okay, here we go. almost made Christmas Carol got in there, but anyway, so yeah, that's just some of the licks that I know how to use, and a tune that I actually know how to use them, and it's not a theory exercise. It's a matter of having practiced certain sounds and hearing the changes really well, and then being able to match those two up in a way that is kind of fluid. I tried to play really fast for a second, and then I just ran out of ear space. I didn't anticipate the next chord, so I couldn't really match what I was playing to that, so I just had to stop. And that wasn't a good part of my solo, but it is an important part of practice. I have to, when I am practicing things that I am familiar with, that I have practiced, I also need to push myself. I need to say, all right, well, what if I did play 16th notes this entire time? And sometimes you surprise yourself. I learned this from, I don't remember who, maybe Brad Good or somebody, but just saying, like, play faster than you think you can, and sometimes you'll surprise yourself, and sometimes you'll just find out what you need to practice. So anyway, that's plenty. Oh, thank you. My girlfriend is on now, so I hope you got to see some of it, but this is the end now. So I guess you can watch it later if you want. But yeah, that's a good amount of the way that I approach jazz. I haven't really done this on stream. I'm a little nervous that I will get a lot of negative comments from people who really do know what they're doing. And I would encourage you, if you're going to leave, if you're going to do it, you've already done it. But if you stayed around to the end of the video, I would encourage you to consider that this is just some classical jerk's method that he had to come up with because people kept asking him to play jazz gigs and he didn't know how to do it. And so I came up with a way to use the theory knowledge that I had and the Arban's book kind of knowledge, which a lot of jazz players practice out of the Arban's book, at least brass players, especially trumpet players. But I had to figure out a way that I could understand jazz, and it served me well enough. I'm not a master of anything that I do, honestly, but this method, when I practice it, helps me be competent in a way that I can at least hang with somebody who actually does know what they're doing, and I can respond to them. I can trade fours, I can trade eights. You know, I can put on a good show is I guess the best way. Even if the other person knows that it's all BS and that I'm not really like practice like they are, but you know, but I also play orchestra concerts, and I also play brass quintet stuff, and I do a lot of other things, and I don't have the amount of time that I really should dedicate. If I really wanted to do this well, I think this method would get me there if I did nothing else. And so that's kind of my idea. And if I'm wrong, then okay, you know, I don't need to be more right than this for me. And I think that this gets somebody who really does want to be great at this at least about halfway there. And then you need to study with somebody who really knows what they're doing. And so, yeah, if this was helpful to anybody, I hope it was. You know, use this system. I'll put it back up on the screen at the end here. This is the whole thing. So you can see you need to first know your scales, your modes, your arpeggios, your diatonic 7 chords, your scales in thirds, right? Then you need to know you need to be able to play a particular tune, all the chord tones, right? Roots, thirds, fifths, sevenths, ninths. And if you don't know what that is, then you need to go find out from a theory website and then write that out for your tunes and make sure you're right by playing them, right? Then don't worry about this middle part. That was just me talking to somebody about something when I was making it. Then we need to outline the chords, which we've done. That's just the arpeggios, and that's just literally play all the notes in time with the play. All of this is with play along. Then we're going to do the Ebersol, Coltrane kind of patterns on those things. So we fill in the notes between the chords. Then we're going to play a bass line, a smooth melody, a one-note samba, a simple solo that perhaps has one lick or something like that, right? And then we're going to just let it rip. We're just going to play over the changes. And what I like to do at home is I put on the play along and I play every other chorus and I sing every other chorus. That way I'm resting and I'm still getting a chance to hear and figure things out, right? So, okay, I've said thank you for coming, and we're going to quit like 18 times now. We really are this time. Thank you for coming, and I hope you learned something. Like I said, this is not the definitive jazz method, and it probably argues against a lot of other methods. That's not the intention. This is a classical guy coming at this from with a good sense of style and nothing else. And so trying to figure out how to do this, and so hopefully it gets you about halfway there if you're really trying to be a professional. And if you're just trying to pretend to be a professional, then this is a good method. All right, I will see you next week. Goodbye.